and welcome to Crow Jam, the podcast where two sisters and occasional guest try to develop and pitch a board game concept in under an hour. I'm Miriam.
I'm Georgia.
And we're very excited to be joined by our guest, my esteemed friend Kieran.
Hello,
Kieran,
everybody.
would you mind
Wonderful to be here.
telling the listener a little about yourself?
Yeah, so I am not actually in academia like the previous guests to Crow Jam. I am a chemist. I basically work in the health and safety sector.
Which we're all very grateful and impressed by.
Thank you for making chemicals safe.
I mainly tell people not to drink things they shouldn't. So it's not all that.
And we're very grateful that those people didn't drink those things. And how would you describe your gaming habits or gaming preferences?
Excessive and too much, but I think the things that I've really been enjoying recently have been the sort of strategy games, whether that's Civ on the computer or something a little bit more tabletop. I play D&D where I can. Got into it in 4th edition with far too many numbers and modifiers to any sort of role, and quite enjoyed the transition to 5th. It's a bit more plug and play. And outside that, just about any board game going whenever I'm across visiting other people. And I think at the moment our board game, my own personal board game sort of stack is far too short. So I don't know if there's any good suggestions from here, or from yourself, Miriam or Georgia. I'll take them on board.
We'll bring some games when we come to yours on Monday.
Hey, looking forward to
it. Great. Well, it is the festive season. We did our sort of gift exchange episode on the last recording, and this time we've asked Kieran to bring our prompt. What was the prompt word that you wanted to bring to this episode, Kieran?
So I decided to shamelessly court George's interests here, and I decided to bring along the word transparency. My thinking behind this is just the amount of times that layered transparent cards have been mentioned that I couldn't resist. I couldn't resist tempting it.
Yeah, it has come up a lot, and we basically never do it.
Hey, we made In the Clearing.
Yeah, that does have layered cards. Yeah, I think this is obviously I would think this is a great prompt because it is inspired by my interests. But I think one of what makes a great prompt for this podcast very often is like a word with multiple meanings. And transparency is definitely one of those. So Kieran, do you want to sort of start off with, were there particular things you had in mind when you chose this prompt?
I haven't done a huge amount of preparation, I'll be quite honest, but my thinking behind the word transparency was either the sort of transparent cards idea, or it could be a slightly more thematic for when this will be going out, sort of water crystals, refractions in ice or snow or something like this, or less physically sort of openness in deed or action, whether that was people needing to state their intention in a board game before actually sort of going towards it, and because everybody's clearly stated what they're going towards, there can be competition to block them, or I don't know. I just thought I'd throw a word with a few different meanings out there and see what you guys might do of it.
Yeah. I also didn't do a ton of preparation, but I was quite interested in that last idea of like transparency in the sort of metaphorical sense of like, saying what you think and meaning it, or not hiding your intentions.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's quite interesting to think about what that could even mean within a board game, because it's usually going to end up resulting in not transparency, right? Like I feel like a lot of the games
yeah,
that play with transparency are actually more sort of like
skullduggery in the background almost.
yeah. So yeah, no, I didn't I didn't have a lot of like formed ideas about this. I did remember seeing, and I don't know whether this exists or I imagined it, a game that involved transparent cards or like sheets quite a long time ago, where it was like the sheets had sort of like very simple diagrammatic images on, and then you would layer them up, and there was a kind of communication game in the style of Concept, but instead of like pointing to things, you were like creating a sort of collage by layering up transparent.
Oh, that could be quite cool.
Yeah. I haven't seen that personally, but that's
I remember there was a game we played, yours, Miriam, once, where it was sort of the building up of the pictures from several different layers of like background and then things in the front, and you sort of generate the name with it.
Yeah. Canvas is an absolutely gorgeous game.
That's it, yeah.
Any thoughts on your end, Georgia?
So I was most taken by the idea of openness or truthfulness in the gameplay, although I think what I would most want to do would be combine that with one or more of the other ideas. But I had a similar thought to what you guys have said, which is that any game that kind of has openness baked into it usually has a flip side that's to do with deceit in some way, that both openness and deceit are maybe sort of differently incentivized, or because there might be like a prisoner's dilemma involved.
Who doesn't enjoy lying to their friends, really?
I mean, I'm a big fan of sort of social deduction games and things like that.
I did just have a very weird visual idea, which I don't think this is necessarily a thing one could turn into a game, but I imagined like like silhouettes in windows, like the idea that like maybe if at night, if it's dark and there's a light on in a house, you might be able to see just like shadows at the window.
Yes.
Is there some way that you could do like a game about kind of like shadow trickery, where like you're trying to convince your friends that one thing is going on inside your house when it's actually something else?
Oh, so I'm imagining almost, the sort of, I'm doing an action here, like there's no camera, you're in different rooms you can't see, but the sort of like shadow puppet sort of theatre type thing. I was doing a very awful butterfly at this point. It looked more like a spider. But, yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. I do like those ideas. I do like the idea with the silhouettes of kind of like building something up to sort of create a new image kind of thing.
A bit a la canvas almost.
Done a little drawing to sort of describe that, but it's not very neat.
Hey, well, people get to see the video.
Yes, this is true.
I like the idea of a sort of I'm not sure whether that's somebody sort of like pinching the shoulder of the person in the window, a very large sort of grey hand, or a
it's Johnny Darko.
Yeah, I was going to say some sort of malicious
terrifying
rabbit appearing.
Yeah. So Miriam, your idea that from sort of what I was taking away from it would be that you would maybe have lots of transparent cards that had different silhouettes on them, but you would try and build them up to try and create some kind of like a misleading silhouette. And
okay,
I agree with you that I'm not entirely certain what the game is there, but that has given me another thought, which is, could we make a game that involves a projector in some way?
Yeah.
So that you like insert the slides in front of a light and project a shadow.
Yeah. Should I start the timer, by the way?
Yeah, let's start the timer and just see where it goes.
All right, here goes. Starting timer.
We see what transparent and or shadowy legs we have.
Okay. Well, what might a game that involved a projector and like shadows or silhouettes do? I think that there may be an existing like shadow puppetry game. I think I have seen such a thing on sale at the cafe. But what might make something like that interesting?
It could be something to turn it on its head a little bit. Instead of it being the shadow, it being about the negative space a bit more. I'm not sure how we could do that, but it's, instead of it being the sort of thing that your hand's covering up, it's what your hand's not covering up in the sort of shadow puppet example, or what isn't hidden.
This isn't exactly like a game that would be fun, but the thing that came to mind would be, I can't think what it's called right now, but do you know that game where you are trying to recreate the arrangement of cubes? So there's a card that's got an arrangement of cubes on it, and you only have a certain angle on it.
Mental blocks. So it would be something like that, where you are maybe competing as teams to accurately recreate a shadow using a selection of transparent cards. So they would sort of overlap and create shapes and stuff. So it's like I said, it's not very interesting. There's not like a full-blown game there, but that's what it made me think of.
I wonder whether there could be a sort of, I'm imagining almost now some blocks, maybe not even quite 4 spotlights around it. That might be a bit much, but I was thinking some arrangement where whatever is built in the center looks different from however many players we have, from all of their different angles, and then you're trying to build up something to match it.
Like
you start with some sort of shadow. You have some sort of miscellaneous pile of something in the center, and every turn or round you're adding a block to try and make it look more like your thing and less like other people's, or something like that.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so this sounds really cool, but I am trying to, I'm going to start doing some drawing and just see what that kind of
this is reminding me of that that like crazy like shadow art that you sometimes see, where what the thing is, like you see it in like a GIF or a video shot where it's like
it's like a ship from one angle, you turn another, it's just like some dangling forks or something, cutlery, and it's just because of the way the light's played upon it, and you turn around another way and suddenly it's 2 dancers or something nuts like this.
Like I don't know. I assume that either there's like some insane like computer modeling or something that goes into that, or else the people who make those things are just crazy geniuses.
Yeah, they just haven't seen the sun in like the 4 years it's taken them to make it.
But that's a cool idea. I was kind of imagining separately to this idea, but maybe there's some way that we could make the two things fit together. Like, you know how if you've ever played Dixit or something like that, you have images on the cards, and they will have like, sometimes they'll have a sort of like cohesive theme, and sometimes they'll just have like sort of disparate elements in the image. There could be something about like combining different elements in your shadow image to make a whole sort of scene, but one that invokes a certain thing, or not quite sure what I'm getting at. I guess that would be one of these more sort of abstract, more like communication-y games, less, I guess.
I quite like that in relation to this is a game that's very related to Dixit, and it does get name checked on the pod a fair amount, is Mysterium. And the idea that you could do some kind of limited communication thing by creating shadows has such a sort of spooky feel to it. It's almost like a spirit box or something, like a seance.
Yeah, you're right. If it was a similar sort of situation to Mysterium, where you're like a particular person is like a phantom or I don't know, some kind of like spooky person who's like separated from the audience and can only communicate in a certain way. If you were trying to get a message across to people, that would be interesting.
I feel like considering this is going to be going out very close to Christmas, we've suddenly turned it a little bit more Dickens, Ghosts of Christmas, past, present, and future here, haven't we?
Maybe you're trying to warn somebody of something, like
he's behind you. Oh no, he isn't.
I don't know. Could that be fun? Like, there could be.
It's got a charades element to it, doesn't it?
Yeah. It has got a charades element to it. So I'll tell you what I'm now thinking, which is something between Mysterium, charades, Clue, or Cluedo, something like that, so that there is there's an active player and a team of guessers, and the active player has to communicate a certain number of pieces of information using cards that they slot into a sort of a lit box, but they don't have exactly what they need. So let's imagine, even though this is kind of a bit of a basic theme because it's already been done in Mysterium and Cluedo, but let's say that you have to like tell the other players how you were murdered and you were shot with a gun, but you don't have a gun, but you might have two cards that you could sort of juxtapose to create something relatively gun-shaped and cast a shadow like that.
Okay.
So
I was thinking you could even sort of try and do it from almost conceptual elements. If there was some sort of, like, I don't know, like you've got something which looks like a star, but to the ghost it could like look like a sort of bang, a sort of muzzle explosion sort of thing, and could end up with some quite sort of interesting takes from an audience in that sort of situation. I imagine people going, "Oh yeah, a meteorite fell on your head" or something like that.
I'm thinking that because of George's illustration, I'm imagining this game, but I'm imagining a situation where you have the box and then people are seated all around it. Like there's one person looking at each face, and then you could be communicating sort of different things to different people. I guess the same way that in Mysterium you're giving different visions to different players, right? Like,
yeah, I really like that, like, because the person who was seated at position 1 here wouldn't be able to see what the person seated at position 2 here was necessarily getting.
Yeah.
So I feel like that might add a little bit more interest. Like you could maybe still hear what the other paranormal investigators are saying, but you're having to use their context clues in addition to what you can see. I feel like
I'm thinking almost theming wise, I could almost see a sort of Ouija board type thing around this. But
oh yeah,
no, I totally see something like that. The other thing that I was thinking about is whether there could be, like, one of the things that you could do to distinguish it from Mysterium, let's say, is have the communication be a little bit more two-way. So maybe the ghost
once for yes, twice for no, sort of banging on the table, or are you thinking more sort of free-flowing than that?
I was thinking a bit more free-flowing than that, in that maybe the transparent cards could move from the guessers to, so maybe like the ghost has a hand of transparent cards to start off with, but the guessers also have their own that they can kind of like give to the ghost to try and help them. So that, and you know, as you sort of start to build up your idea, maybe you're starting to think like, oh, is that star supposed to be an explosion, or is it supposed to be something else? You could give them, you know, another thing that might add to the shadow that you think will help them.
Yeah,
let's give them a stick. The most versatile of items.
How I would like for there to be a way in which the fact that we're using shadows sort of makes a difference? Does that make sense? Like, what makes it a shadow game rather than just like a game with cards or something like that?
So the thing that I thought made it a shadow game rather than just a game with cards is the idea that you could put multiple cards onto one side of the shadow box to create a more complex shadow.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I guess I see that. I'm sort of what might be some cool like themes or stories or ideas of like what or why we're trying to communicate.
Beyond the kind of arguably quite boring, I'm a ghost and someone killed me.
Trying to get the answers to an exam, but from somebody who sat it the year before, but unfortunately this is the most logical way you could get that.
I died before I could pass this exam.
I'm now picturing somebody sort of trying to advocate on behalf of somebody, like again, classic of somebody being left with business undone, but and going, oh no, it turns out that I'm actually a lawyer for the deceased in this particular example, but they want to communicate about their wishes as to I don't know what color dog bowl that their pet should have instead. I have no idea where that was going, but it's ended up somewhere.
I think unfinished business is actually a perfect idea. I think it takes the sort of like slightly trite idea of murder and just sort of does something similar, but a bit like friendlier.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So
I never got to visit Stonehenge, they say. Yeah.
I think that's cool. So it could be
what are the sort of things that would be useful here? Because it's sort of like things that weren't done could be sort of travel or people, or I feel that if I start listing more, I'm going to end up with just articulate categories here. But
people to see, places to go, things to do.
And then it turns out it was Margaret Thatcher with the steel chair in the drawing room.
I just had a thought, and I don't know whether this would work, but what if you have the arrangement with the light box and different like guesses sat on different sides, and the ghost has a selection of cards that they can place and people can see different images as they're guessing. What if rather than trying to communicate something different to each guesser, what you're actually trying to do is trying to get everybody to convene on the same idea, like the thing you have a thing that you communicate, and you need to try and get everyone to get the same thing, but you have to use different like cards or images. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that does make sense. I think it's like, I think that is quite cool. So it would be like maybe a little bit more complex of a concept than a gun or a mountain or something. It would be something with a bit more depth to it than that.
Yeah, I'm not sure, because we don't really know at this point like how figurative the things on the cards are going to be.
That's what I was just going to ask. Like, are we using kind of abstract shapes and trying to chunk them together, or are we doing something that's a bit more that maybe has like silhouettes of people and different hats that would line up with their heads and things like that?
Quite fun.
I guess you could have I still don't know the cards answer, but like in my mind you could have, I guess, a limited number of rounds in which you're trying to succeed, and you could have like each round you can give each person their shadow vision, and everybody gets to say a short phrase or a few words, and your communication kind of just comes down to you like give a token, or you point to the person closest to the thing you're trying to, like a sort of warmer colder type thing, which obviously can be very subjective and can lead to confusion. But
I was wondering whether you could almost do a you could have one person who's sort of building up like the bottom third of a picture, somebody who's in the middle and somebody who's at the top, when you're trying to communicate what these things are, whether it was a sort of 3 separate panels, a sort of beginning, middle and end, or whether and then you could actually stack more cards together. So you start off and somebody goes, well, I mean, it looks like a dog or a cat or some sort of 4-legged animal, another thing on top of it, which adds a bit more. It looks like more somebody walking a dog or somebody being chased by the dog, depending on not quite which way up they put it, but where they put it in the it in the scene.
I quite like it for maybe like a sequence of events or a sequence of related ideas. So the sort of the similar thing that I had been thinking is, let's say you were trying to communicate an idea like a skiing academy. So you might be able to give one person mountain and then one person like a teacher
with their well-known tricorn hat, yes,
with their classic
right, I know
waterboard.
Sorry,
I
cannot draw up a topic. Like people in glass houses, I should not be throwing these stones there.
And then maybe the last one is like, I don't know, maybe it's just a ski or something. So that person 1 is seeing part of the puzzle and person 2 is seeing part of it and person 3 is seeing part of it, and they're all sort of trying to like, then maybe the token idea that Miriam talked about is like when you give kind of one token to someone who's said the closest thing, or maybe there's tokens that can kind of nudge you in one direction or something like that.
I guess I guess this feels a little bit did the teacher come fully formed, or did you need to make the teacher? Does that make sense?
So totally. So in my mind, you needed to make the teacher. Like,
right.
You needed to start with, I guess, a silhouette of a person, and then you also got a silhouette of a hat.
Okay. Yes.
And so
a silhouette of a donkey's tail, but
exactly.
Or the little dangling tassel thing.
The crucial bit.
Mortarboard.
The mortarboard. So I guess like maybe how it would work would be that you would have because people and adding hats to them is a very like easy to grasp concept, but how do you do it for the other parts of a concept, I guess, is what I'm currently thinking.
A sequence, it could be a sequence of triangles for the mountain as you've drawn it there, but the issue with that is there would be a sort of optimal way to represent that sort of thing from a given stack of cards, isn't there? Because it would be, I need cards 22, 43 and 67 or something, and put those together, you end up with that.
You need something more. It needs to be either more versatile or more constrained, and I haven't decided which is more interesting.
What about if we explored the sort of more constrained end of things? How could that end up looking?
I think one thing that I do want to bring up, and I know I do often get bogged down in like, how will this mechanically work? But within our like shadow box, yes, we can have like different shapes and things, but how if you wanted to move something to a different position within the box, like how would you make sure that it's stuck there? Does that make sense? Like if you, I don't know, say I've got a hat and I want it to not be in precisely the position that someone's head would be on the other card. Are the cards all the same size and you can only really change where things appear by rotating the cards, or are the cards smaller than the box and you can stick them by friction or something?
Yeah, so they could be static clings, couldn't they? I'll say that what I had been imagining was cards that were the same size as the sides of the lantern box, but it certainly doesn't have to be that. They could be, for example, the cards could be kind of like half the size of the sides of the lantern box, and they could you could either place them like this, so vertically narrow, or horizontally, or you could put them in the middle.
Yeah,
so that would give you more flexibility with where stuff went. Or the alternative is using sort of vinyl static clings to literally kind of stick to the side of the box, but that feels like it might be a bit fiddly.
Well, I suppose again, this is the least of our worries, but I did just want to bring that up as like, how would that
Yeah, it is. I have been having similar concerns.
Okay. And I was getting distracted by the drawings. I initially thought that was a sort of not quite Salvador Dali moustache.
I know, me too.
But...
yeah, but it could be. That's the power of the spirit box.
Anything can become Salvador Dali's moustache. Yeah.
I'm sure Salvador Dali felt the same. Okay. Yeah.
And from there we end up back at the Dada Art School. But
yeah, this does have quite a Dada Art School feel about it. I won't lie.
It's another weird artistic game.
I was initially sort of going in that direction with where my imagination was going. I do kind of want to lean away from that. I do prefer the idea that the things we're trying to communicate would have slightly more specificity to them. Like if we were talking about unfinished business and the ghost was trying to get people to understand like what it like needs to happen or wants to do before it can move on.
I didn't finish my tax returns, he says.
Like what could be some examples and what might that look like? I feel like getting a bit more doing a bit more of a worked example might help us work out where the game sort of the play is going.
Yeah.
I don't know. So
what might be someone's last wish?
I want to see my kid perform in the nativity play.
Okay. It's good. So we think that we would have multiple options to like multiple sides of the lantern to do this on, and then we could also add multiple glyphs to each side of the lantern to kind of create the image. So what kinds of things might we do?
I mean, the way I'm imagining it could be, I guess you would have options about how you wanted to do it, but the thing that's coming to my mind is like each guesser might get a sort of separate part of the concept. Like,
so one of them might get kid.
Yeah, one of them might get like a baby or something, and one of them might get a Christmas tree, and
one of them might get something that looks like a series of foams if they had several animals together, and I don't know, something that looks like a cuboid. In my mind, representing a sort of bale of hay.
Yes.
So, I mean, honestly, this just makes the idea of trying to communicate quite difficult, doesn't it? Yeah, so I like the idea that whatever they turned up with is just what was ever in their pockets at the time. Somebody goes, "Oh yeah, I've got gold. I've got this lovely spice," and somebody goes, "I've got some embalming fluid I found somewhere else."
This is a cute picture. and this is like
So
representing.
this would kind of like want to see my child.
Yeah.
And then you'd have kind of a similar set for, you know, maybe like a play would be indicated.
Maybe two curtains on one side of each other, for example. We could have a sort of, but that would be a whole background one, wouldn't it?
Yeah, but you could have one curtain, right? You could have like,
yeah. So this is making me think that actually potentially this could be one of these games where the like communication elements that you have on is not really limited. Like instead of having a hand of cards, the ghost could have just like all the cards they might want, but their choices about combining things. There's a game called Word Slam where this is the case, where like you have all of the cards, but you just, because it's a race, you just have limited time in which to combine them.
Okay, so
I'm also vaguely reminded of, do you remember that game we played once and sort of passed on to Miriam with the, once or twice, the sort of cooperative sort of storytelling dice with just...
Oh, yes.
Yeah, and that's got a bit more randomness to it than this would have. We'd have sort of the end before we have all the individual pieces being put together, but something about the icons, but I think it might be that eye. It reminds me a bit of that dice with different elements to it. But sorry, I talked over you, I think, Georgia.
I've actually forgotten what it was I was going to say. I think it was, yeah, I have recalled. That what is the limitation then? Like I'm quite on board with the idea that the ghost has, you know, a real smorgasbord of iconography in front of them with which to create the images that they're going to communicate and the shadows they're going to make. But what I want to know is,
what's the restriction?
Yeah, what's the restriction basically? Like, how do we make it so that there's some challenge? Does the ghost have to like do all of this sort of simultaneously, or is there turns?
There could be a sort of almost round of one silhouette card to each person, some sort of discussion about what it could be.
Yeah, I was sort of imagining the same, right? Like where the ghost has a good idea of what kind of collage they want to make, but actually like each time they go round, they have to put just one card in each person's side of the box. And that might mean that they have to end up adding more things to one side than they actually want to.
Yeah, that's quite a good idea. So each of the ones I've drawn there kind of involves three, I guess I'll call them slides. Like slides is the word that I'm thinking of for
microscope
these sort of
slides,
these narrow pieces of transparency that have glyphs printed on them. So yeah, they have to add a slide to every side of the lantern that has a guesser on it every turn.
Yeah.
To communicate something. How are the sort of the missions generated? Are they completely pre-written so that they make perfect sense? Like, I want to see my child perform in a nativity play, or are they a bit more generated than that? So there's a bit more of like a Mad Libs thing. So it could be like, I want to smell my dog
one last time. Yeah. the matted fur, the smell you can never quite get rid of. I quite like that idea. I think for the more creative among us, I'm ruling myself out of this one. Maybe there could be sort of a few suggestions, or if you're really stuck, here's 40 on the back of the instruction manual or something like this that you could pick from. But I think sort of encouraging people to make their own could be quite fun, and having a sort of example of the sort of level of, I won't say high concept of sniffing a dog, but yeah.
You could also add, that could be sort of a built-in like complexity modifier as well. So you know, say you're sort of drawing ideas from from some kind of randomizer, you could make it sort of easier if you're playing with kids, or harder if you're playing with people who've played it a lot.
Yeah.
I was thinking, and as well as the having to put one to each side and build up the sort of picture slowly, you could have a little bit of randomness in how people choose to put it together. If there was sort of somebody found 6 or 9 might be too many to sort of look out from a deck for scratch, but then putting it in the center of the table for the team to pick which ones they think fit. So you could end up with something that looks like a baby being thrown out of a window, for our previous example, with the sort of like curtain and baby, which maybe aren't being lined up correctly. But that could just make it quite difficult. It would be more about the sort of discussion of, we have these things, in what way do these match?
So there's, I do like the idea that there's sort of, it is, on the one hand, it's a limited communication game, but on the other hand, like, communication is relatively free flowing. Like, the limitation, sort of like in Mysterium, the limitation is between the alive players and the dead player, so to speak. But the alive players are maybe a bit more free to talk to one another, and it's more collaborative.
Yeah. I think
It's quite a sort of weird one building. I just love the idea of going to nativity play, though. Just sort of going, no, I should have seen Timmy as the star.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the nice things about that is that it's got just the right level of complexity to take it from, like, you have to do that extra bit of communication to get it to nativity play.
Yeah,
like,
I think that's it has enough things to combine that, like,
I never learned to do a backflip. Yeah.
I guess actually the level of complexity could also relate to the number of players, right? Like, if you just had 2 guesses, then you might need to stick to, like, I want to see the sunrise
over the pyramids.
Yeah, like, but if you had 4 players, it could be more like, I want to take my I don't know.
This is so hard to do when you're doing it off the cuff. I want to see the sunrise over the pyramids, like, from a boat.
Yeah.
You can just add extra layers. I think the extra layers per number of players makes a lot of sense. Because then you can kind of have multiple parts of the puzzle being built up. I feel like the format of unfinished business, this I want to means that you can have a lot of, like, predetermined glyphs that kind of have like verb meanings, for example.
Yeah.
Or you can do things that would be combined to make more complex verbs. So, an I for C is very simple, but play backgammon, you would have to do a bit more to make that happen.
Yeah.
But we could do lots of nice sort of iconography that would be, interesting that way.
That could be quite good. Yeah, I was thinking, I have to admit, I'm atrocious at gammon, to the point where you said verb and I had to remind myself a verb is a doing word. And there could be some fun double meanings in terms of, I want to avoid something, and the sort of there's no clear avoid in our sort of decks. Instead, there's a picture of a duck for somebody ducking some.
Love the idea that a ghost unfinished business is that they want to avoid something. It's like, you did it, mate.
I want to avoid my rival's ghost. He followed me.
Oh my god, imagine you think that you're finally free of your rival and then his ghost turns up. Miriam, how are we doing for time?
We have 25 minutes left.
Okay, so not quite at the time where we need to think about what we're going to call this game or anything like that. But should we do a little bit of should we run it back a little bit just to be clear on sort of what we've got so far?
Yeah. I think that probably there can, for the purposes of generating ideas for unfinished business, we could have sort of cards in categories, right? Like sort of beginning of sentence cards, middle of sentence cards, end of sentence cards.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was imagining. And for a more complex game, so for a game with 2 players, you might just have a beginning and an end. For a 3-player, a beginning, a middle, and an end. And for 4 players, beginning, middle, end.
Yeah, and it might be the case that the player needs to fudge it a little bit to make the combination of cards make sense. Like, it can't be I want to see my kid over the pyramids. But
well, maybe it doesn't need to have sort of full-on sentence
construction. But it could be
then
more
maybe it's kind of like verb. So it could be like verb and location, or verb and thing, and then extra things to go in the middle. So
have a withs or besides or other.
Yeah.
Again, sort of cross my fingers, I'm not choosing the wrong word here, but not quite prepositions. So something along these lines.
You're in I trust you that's right. I have never learned any of the proper words for grammar. So, but you could sort of just fill those in yourself, right? If you drew C and pyramid, then you know that it's kind of see the pyramids. And then if you drew C child pyramid, then you want to be I want to see my child at the pyramids. The words in between kind of suggest themselves.
Yeah, and I guess you can write your full sentence on a piece of paper and put it in a hidden envelope or whatever. You can decide exactly what the prompt is, but the cards are just there to sort of encourage,
to kind of kick you off. So in terms of what we have so far, we have this kind of spirit box thing that goes in the middle of the table, right? That's like a little projector that projects shadows onto the table, and it has slots in it where you can, they're not the exact same shape and size as the slides, but the slides will kind of neatly fit into it, and you could have them vertical or horizontal. You could stack them up. You'd have them just in the middle. You've kind of got options for how you position them. And then we talked a little bit about how the different cards might work. So we started off with quite abstract ideas, but we've landed on something that's a bit more iconographic. So it's not fully abstract, but it's not fully figurative. But instead we're going to be using kind of iconography. So
suddenly hieroglyphics,
hieroglyphics. We actually have ended up with a sun rising over the pyramids there on the...
did you do that deliberately?
I think I might have implanted the idea in my own mind. So you've got, and the ghost has access to all the iconography from the start, but they have to add 1 slide to every side of the lantern every turn. They're trying to get every paranormal investigator, they're trying to get all of them to the same place. Yeah. So at some point, the investigators must kind of submit their guess, I suppose.
Yeah. I think they can be talking... Sorry, Kieran.
I was thinking, what about sort of rather than applying it to the box, passing it to the investigator who chooses where to put it and how, maybe with the sort of caveat that once it's on the box, it can't be moved, which means you've got to try and sort of figure out that if you put too many things in the wrong place, was that a swan or a duck card? I can't see the neck because I've gone and put the triangle over it instead.
I do quite like that, making it more difficult.
Could even do this might be a bit rogue, but sort of people putting it on, building up their picture. Every investigator writes down what they think their particular side is, and then the box gets rotated. So it's another investigator looking at it going, what on earth have you just done? Why have you done it this way? Again, this could be...
No, I really like the idea of rotating it. So were you thinking sort of between turns? So the ghost would like give everyone a slide. The person would place the slide on their side of the projector. Then the projector would rotate one. And then the ghost would give everyone their next slide. I do really like that.
Oh God, I'm not gonna lie. This has gone too far for me.
Okay.
Are you, just to be clear, are you imagining that this is deliberately to mix up the ideas so that the like baby would no longer be with the heart, it would be with the... Or is that not?
Because the ghost would still be able to see the lantern, so the ghost would still be giving everyone the pieces they need for the same side. So the concepts would stay related to the side of the lantern that they're on.
Okay.
But it wouldn't be one investigator wouldn't be associated with one concept for the whole game, if you see what I mean. So everyone would get a hand on the ball every time.
Yeah. Okay, I'm okay with that. I think the bit that was throwing me off was the idea that it's the guessers who are placing the slides, because while I think that's cool, I think it slightly takes away from the sort of the flexibility of the ghost to be able to combine the images in a way that they want to. Like, because
I think I agree.
It's going to be quite key to creating the effect that they want, I guess.
Yeah, I do agree, actually. Like, I think we can sort of hit the middle ground and say that like everyone does get to see each side of the concept as it goes round, because then you still sort of get the situation where you're not going to see the concept as it develops, if you see what I mean. So if you have the pyramid on turn one, then you might see a triangle, and then it's going to go round quite a lot and change by the time you might not see it again. So you'll see like the first part of that idea, and then you'll see a more developed version of the other ideas.
Which is arguably could be sort of helpful
for the ghost,
in the sense that like the ghost sometimes, because of needing to place one slide each turn, might need to add something. You know, when you're playing one of these games and you do something and then you hear people talking and you're like, oh fuck, the thing I just did made everyone... I think
it's a campsite, not the pyramids, no.
completely down the wrong path. Like, like if you're playing concept and you like place a cube and everyone starts completely departs from the correct idea that they were heading towards.
Yeah, I'm on board with that. So I feel like we sort of have the concept.
Yeah. This is cool.
Yeah, it's very weird, but I feel like that always happens with the video episodes.
Maybe we just like making weird games.
I think we do like making weird games, but I think also there's something about like jamming with a third person that kind of like pushes us in a lot of different directions.
I can be the fly in the proverbial ointment. Yeah.
I mean, the thing that I like about this one is that quite often our games, I mean, they might involve like sort of proprietary components or anything, but I don't think we have ever come up with a component quite this proprietary. So it's like a cuboid rotating lantern with slots for slides.
That's sticky enough or like frictiony enough that you can sort of build up a thing as you go there.
Yeah, it has to have it has to be kind of a tight enough fit. Yeah, I think that's I think that is really quite funny that we've made something kind of that complicated.
Yeah.
So do we have any thoughts about names, visual identity, anything like that?
I've got something, I'm not sure if it's something to riff off, but maybe almost going back to transparency, but almost from a ghost perspective, he can see right through me, or something like this. Like trying to get your intention across, but it being a bit difficult.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a weak start. I can't, like...
No. Yeah, like something about being hard to see. I like the two
just
phrases.
can't see your side.
I can't see your side is nice. The two phrases that have stuck out during this process have been spirit box and unfinished business. I
have to say that sort of first spirit box drawing that you did, Georgia, I thought would make quite a good sort of box cover, you know, the sort of like black and maybe a bit of like white or yellow and the shadow reading spirit box on one of the sides. It sort of struck me quite well.
It was very evocative.
Yeah, I could see that. So when I first started imagining the visual identity, because I was thinking about sort of Victoriana and seances and stuff, I had something that was quite sort of ornate, I guess, in mind, but actually maybe kind of a minimalist. You know, we were talking about like Ouija boards and stuff like that, but maybe there is kind of a more minimal take on the spirit box.
Yeah.
I like unfinished business as well. I like both of those. I think I like spirit box because it refers to the proprietary thing that we invented.
Spirit box TM, you mean?
Yeah.
And I like unfinished business for the fact that on top of being the kind of thing that the ghost tries to communicate, it also sort of describes, like, you know, at least the sort of early parts of the round where you've got, you know, where you've started trying to make up an image, but you haven't been allowed to complete it yet. So like, sometimes you might want to combine images, but you have to start by placing something and just be like staring at the person being like, but just hold on, okay, because there's a second part of this coming and that's going to make a lot more sense then.
I also quite like it if we do go with a bit more of a kind of sleek box design, is that there's something kind of business-like about it.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And just thinking about how the slides might look as well, like they might look sort of quite quite sort of sleek and modern and iconographic. So maybe it does make sense. I'm quite happy with unfinished business if you are. Kieran, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, as I said, I think unfinished business is quite a fun one. I can sort of see it from both sides there. I would just more sort of, when I was sort of throwing out the see through me I was just more trying to come up with more words for or trying to sort of have a bit of a weird transparency thing to it. I wasn't particularly wedded to the idea.
I think that like something like see through me or like,
because
or something about being clear, like making your meaning clear, like because it's transparent. I feel like that feels like a tagline to me because it's a bit longer.
Yeah.
Unfinished business. I don't know. Clarity of
clarity of communication. I quite like. I mean, I think there's definitely something there.
Something about clear sight, right? Like clairvoyancy.
Oh damn! Yeah, this is all going on.
Clairvoyancy, not quite unfinished business simulator. Why did you go for the word simulator there?
It is almost like a sort of a corporate take on on talking to spirits.
I like, maybe in the fiction of the like rules leaflet, it's like, you know, we're a service provider. This is what we do. We're like a a sub-department of a legal firm, an actuary, and what we do is communicate with the departed to find out what they want.
I thought it was a more diplomatic Ghostbusters, you know, it's sort of like, come on, move along. Like, what did you wish you'd seen? Oh, you wish you'd seen your child fly over the pyramids.
And we do it with the spirit box TM.
That's quite fun, I think.
I feel like that little piece of the puzzle kind of just clicked into place for me, because I had been thinking about the iconography and how there's something quite modern about it, you know, like very simple kind of line art or solid shapes. So yeah, there's you could sort of do quite a corporate thing with it.
Well, we've got nine minutes remaining. So is there anything further on the sort of visual side? I guess I definitely see it being quite a largely like monochromatic sort of idea.
Yeah, the color palette that I kind of had in mind was something like black, gray, like navy blue, and kind of like a yellow that kind of represents the light. So that you would sort of like it would still feel pretty corporate.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Best played in a darkened room well past the point at which you should have gone home from work, but you still haven't yet.
Yeah, I mean, this is it. This game definitely has to be played in a darkened room, doesn't it? Like that is a certain requirement.
Or I'm sort of picturing, you know, those old-fashioned camera boxes with the hoods.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
We're just making more proprietary as we go, aren't we? It comes with sort of a 3-person hoodie as well. Yeah.
And one of the great things about Crow Jam, we say it every week, is that we don't have to make the games. We have the idea. We don't have to make the special proprietary parts.
The video episodes are often the ones where, like, it's right towards the end I start getting very excited about the idea of playing a game like this, because Georgia's like brings the whole kind of visual identity together with her drawings, and then I'm like, yeah, no, this would rule.
The
mad art skills with a Z, yes.
Yes.
Well, it's always good to have them recognized.
So we should carry on.
I was just going to say, I sort of think we're there. So yeah, go ahead. What were you going to say?
I think we should do our sum up. And,
okay.
Yeah. So it's what have we made, guys?
Okay, we have made a game inspired by the concept of transparency. We were taken in by the idea at long last of getting to do layered transparent cards, and we also started thinking about using a projector to create shadows, which got us thinking about limited communication games where one player represents a ghost, and in this case, so sort of inspired by games like Mysterium, but in this case it would be done using shadows. So we came up with an idea where you have a square rotating spirit box in the middle of the table. You represent sort of corporate paranormal investigators who are trying to discover the unfinished business of a ghost. The ghost has access to a kind of library of transparent glyphs that they can use to build up messages that are meant to communicate what their last wishes are. And this is done by them placing one slide per player every turn, and then rotating the spirit box so that each player sees the idea build up bit by bit, so that they all have differing amounts of information on every concept, and together they have to put the concepts together to come up with the final answer, which has been sort of randomly generated using a deck of cards. We talked about how that might be done by sort of having verb and noun and location type prompts to help people come up with their ideas. And we think we have called it Unfinished Business. We think it's going to have a relatively simple, modern, quite neutral scheme, in keeping with the idea of it being kind of a corporate paranormal investigation business. Do we think that the thing in the middle, our sort of proprietary game device, is called the Spirit Box TM, and the tagline is going to be something about transparency, seeing through, clairvoyancy, clear sight. There's going to be a tagline that has that kind of sense to it, that's about that's a sort of pun on seeing the truth and seeing through things.
How very festive.
Yes, it's so Christmassy. I mean, we talked about a nativity play.
And the ghost of Christmas, past, present, future. Yeah. That's something for bringing the concept, I suppose.
Oh, well, we've got there with 4 minutes remaining, so I'm gonna stop the timer right there. This was a great one.
Yeah, I always love it, but this one was particularly wacky.
That's quite a bit of fun as well. Thank you very much for having me along, both of you.
Oh.
Thank you so much. Can our listeners find you anywhere?
Should
I don't know.
Well, I mean, I'm not sure I'm sort of fit to be seen outside, so and that's probably the best place to catch me is
outside,
somewhere wandering, lonely as the proverbial shadow. But yeah, I don't really have an online presence I want to push. So,
all right.
No,
well,
me neither.
Listener, if you're not already, you should do what Kieran did, and you should watch some of our previous video episodes. What did we do last time? We made a mystery about
detective, choose your own adventure, punctuation. It had a lot going on. It's called Impostrophe. I also encourage our listener to do what Kieran did and go the listener to guest pipeline. If you are our listener, why not get in touch? We'd love to know something about you. You're an absolute mystery to us. Let's take this relationship from parasocial to social.
I'm not paranormal, yeah.
Ooh, or paranormal if our listener is a ghost.
If only they could communicate through the Spirit Box TM.
So, well, thank you so much for being our guest this week, Kieran. It's been an absolute treat and a pleasure.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for bringing your mellifluous tones to the podcast. This is great. Listener, come back next week, next month for more Crow Jam.
Next year it'll be.
Next year, come back next
time
year.
Our listener hears from us, it'll be 2023.
And without further ado,
Go!